All right, so I think we can get started. Welcome everyone to Support for Media Assignments. My name is Sean Jackson. I'm the instructional video lead for LSA Technology Services. We're a team of video professionals who work with faculty to implement media projects into their courses. We also have a video production group that creates video content for courses. And we kind of help faculty kind of navigate the rather complicated aspect of different types of multimedia. So today we're going to talk a lot about supporting students. And we're going to cover why students need support for media assignments, more so than with other traditional types of assignments. We'll talk about scaffolding and why it's really important to do that with media assignments. We'll also talk about what kind of support that faculty can provide and what kind of support LSA can provide to students. I'll end with some 5 takeaways that I think that that if you take away anything from this workshop, these are the 5 big tips that I have for you, and also some resources at the end here. All right, so why do students need support for media projects? Right. So media projects are complex. They are students are taking audio, video, images, and they're remixing or creating those elements to demonstrate, what they know about a given topic or what they've learned about a given topic, to demonstrate, the mastery that they have of that objective. And so that's very complex. And this could be something as like podcasts, audiovisual essays, photo essays, story maps, having them actually author like a zine or book or pamphlet, animation. There's a lot of different types of projects here. It's not just podcasts and AV essays. These can be group projects, it can be individual projects. But the main thing, the thing that kind of separates these from traditional projects is that you will have students engaging in really high level cognition, right? If we look at Bloom's taxonomy, right, where you have, memorization, evaluation, and then you move up, the highest level of that is creation, right? Having them creating new objects, right? New creative work, right? And so they are operating above where you would traditionally with something like a quiz or even a paper essay. So because of that, students need support, right? Students have a pretty wide-ranging level of understanding of media creation tools before they come to campus. Some of them will have absolutely no experience whatsoever. Some seniors here will have absolutely no experience with them as well. It'll be completely random or seemingly random. And it doesn't matter what department you're in, what specialization you're in, that familiarity is going to range wildly. Some people are going to be, it'll come second nature. Some will need to learn it from the start. And so they're going to need support to kind of build up those skills to be able to accomplish the assignments that you're giving them. Also, higher level cognitive and emotional tasks, right? Creating stuff, coming up with, creative ways of remixing materials, writing for a new audience that they're not used to writing for. Those typically just generally require more support. You've got technical needs, you've got workflow issues that you need to figure out. There's just a lot of like little details that students need help with. And a big one is the writing. It's kind of, it's not as prominent because it's because the flashiness of the multimedia is there, but writing for these formats is completely different from essay writing. And students need to know that, and they need to know how that differs. To know that, for example, that 1 minute of video is typically about 250 words. It's one page, right? It's one written double-spaced page. And so if you're having them, read a 20-page essay, that's 20 minutes of video, and that's way too many words for most people to say in a short video, right? So they need to learn how to condense, how to speak to an audience watching a short video, right? They need to show things instead of telling things, things like that. You also have to ensure that there's equal access, right? So it's an equity issue. Not every student is going to have their own laptop. Not every student will have the gear necessary to do this stuff. And also, making sure that they have, not everyone, people may have computers, but if they have a Chromebook, they won't be able to install the software needed to accomplish these projects. This is where labs come in, things like that, but we'll get to that later. But this is why students need support. And also they need support because they need help figuring out how to balance these things. They need to know how much time these things are going to take, how much they will need to invest in this, so that when they plan their semester out, they can easily, figure out how much time they need to spend on this project. So scaffolding, and why it's important here. It's probably one of the main ways that you can support, as a faculty member, students doing this work. So scaffolding is a way of thinking about taking a very complex thing, like learning how to edit video or learning how to create a podcast, and breaking it down into smaller chunks, right? And figuring out how to build upon those skills to get to where they can make the larger project. Part of this is, giving them small tasks, like, for example, writing a script first, having them do a smaller version of the larger project first, having them have stages, right, where they're meeting one goal, and then they go and they revise it to another goal. This can also be you giving them examples of previous work to show them kind of what is expected of them. This will give students time to practice these skills, give them opportunities for failure without failing the project entirely, be able to give them timely feedback on their progress, so that if someone needs to spend more time to catch up, like that is available to them. It also ensures that no one is doing these projects on the day before it's due, right, or the day of it's due, because these projects take a long time and they take a lot of effort, and take multiple days to do, and you can't just stay up the night before and power out 10 pages in the same way that you can with a paper. The scaffolding, this intentional scaffolding, can also help integrate this into your learning outcomes. And so if you have, for example, if you're doing a thing about journalism, maybe you have them do a small news story first, right, before they do the full podcast, like have them do a news read, for example, just to get them comfortable with the equipment and the software that they're doing before they do the larger project. This doesn't have to include the whole semester, right? If after the midterm you wanted to start incorporating this, that's an option. Or if you want to have something small kind of mixed in throughout the semester. You can have a paper and also have a media assignment, right, later in the semester. It doesn't all have to be like everything in your course leading up to that final project. But the idea is that every step that you take with the scaffold kind of adds a level of complexity and refinement to the final project, and can help students really achieve a much more wholly realized project at the end. So as I mentioned, here's some examples of some scaffolding activities. I really love the idea of proposals and pitching. Part of why that's really important is if students write a proposal or a pitch or do a live pitch in front of the class, depending on what your goals are for that specifically, that can help them really make sure that they're not biting off more than they can chew, right? If the proposal comes back and you're like, whoa, that is way too broad of a topic, or that is way too much research that you're going to be doing on this, you can have them scale it back and edit this, right? Another thing would be to have them bring drafts in. So midway through or something like that of the final project, having them come in, having students review the drafts and have students give feedback. Have the students give each other feedback on their drafts. You could also do role play. For example, with the pitching, if you wanted to do something where there's where they have to convince people, the students in the class of what they're trying to do, that would be an option there. You can also have alternative class meetings, right? For example, meeting at the library to do research, having workshops in computer labs, or meeting completely off-site to have them do something that's related to the final project. The other one, which I think is so key, is having some kind of working session, right? If you have time available to do this, which not every class is going to be able to do this, not every discussion section is going to be able to do this, but if you're able to, I highly recommend it, is having students work on their projects during class time. It's worth flipping that course for that time period just for this, because this allows students to bring in those projects, ask questions of technical staff. For example, we'll get into later how that can happen, or can ask you as a faculty member about their argumentation, about their content, things like that, or ask other students, and other students can hear questions that are being asked by other students. And so there's a real opportunity for them to both catch up and also advance their own understanding of these tools. You can also do check-ins. For example, every week or every other week, if it's a semester-long project, having them kind of give you snippets of their project, right? Or have them kind of tell you where they're at, or have a, like exit ticket kind of thing where, each group kind of talks about, writes down where they think their group is on their project, so you can get a sense of who needs help. Also requiring them to give you their works cited before they actually do the projects. So these bibliographies do before the project is actually being worked on. So they do their research ahead of time, and then do the actual project. This can also give you a sense also of what kind of scope they're working on, and how much they're biting off for this particular project. The other thing is, as far as supporting students, is it's really important to understand the workflow. And by workflow, I mean like the flow of the files and media from their creation to the end of the project. So figuring out how are students going to navigate this assignment? How are they going to, like, if you give them they have to go and they have to film a skit, right, that demonstrates something. Well, how are they going to do that? They need to figure out where they're recording, who is going to be acting in it, what the script is, where the files are going to go, who's going to edit the project, where that file is going to go when it's done, who's going to review it, all that kind of stuff. They need to navigate that. And understanding how that works and kind of modeling that for students will help them know how much time they have to spend, what equipment they're going to need, what supplies they're going to need, if they need support specifically for their knowledge level, and also like what logistical needs. Do they need to get an external hard drive? Do they need to schedule a time somewhere to do the recording? All that is going to be really helpful for you to understand how they're going to accomplish this project so that you can lay out how that support is going to be available to them. So let's kind of recap what faculty can do here. So one thing you can do is, if you obtain the skills you want students to do, right? If you go out and do one of these essays, or do one of these podcasts or photo essays or whatever it is, you can get a sense of what kind of questions students are going to ask, what you're asking of the students, and be able to give them more pointed support rather than having them have to dismiss them to go talk to somebody else. You can also add links and locations to the syllabus in Canvas, as well as assignment descriptions on how they can get asynchronous help, how they can get direct support through different, groups like Bluecore, which I'll discuss in a bit, as well as computer labs that they can go to. It's also vital to mention that support is available during class. Students have a tendency to gloss over details when it comes to, they tend to gloss over details when it comes to looking at things on Canvas. And so if there's not something that is immediately jumping out as a due date or jumping out as a assignment that's due, but it's just like supplemental resources, they may not even look at it. And so by calling it out specifically and saying, you need to look at this because you need to learn this particular skill, students will be more likely to look at it. The big one is providing students with clear expectations and timelines. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but that is absolutely vital to, well, everything in terms of projects, regardless of if they're media projects or not, but specifically the media projects. Giving those clear expectations and timelines is going to be crucial to students being able to schedule all this time in. Sharing your grading rubric and creating a specific rubric for this is actually very helpful. We have some resources available, or we can meet with you for a consultation to kind of go over how that works. But essentially, it's just like any other rubric. You would just want to potentially add something about the actual production of the media and how they use the format to their advantage. And also, you should also consider what you want students to demonstrate, right? And what you want them to accomplish and kind of work backwards from there. The reason I say that is a lot of times people think, oh, I'll just add a podcast assignment to this course, and they'll create podcasts like what I hear from NPR, or whatever podcast network they listen to. And the reality of the situation is that's not going to happen unless you spend a lot of time working with students to work on getting their broadcast voice created, getting them to really work on editing their voice, right? Getting the written voice created for an audio format, and really modeling how that works. So if you want them to create an NPR kind of piece, you kind of have to work backwards from there and figure out, like, what elements do I need to add? What scaffolding do I need to add to make sure that they accomplish that? If you want them to, if it's not going to be for the public, if it's just to have them demonstrate their mastery of a particular topic, just using this format for them to kind of play with, get familiar with, then you don't have to add as much technical scaffolding to things. And that can be way more focused on the content, right? So having a clear understanding of what you want students to accomplish, how high of a bar you want to set for these media projects is really important so that students don't feel like they have to produce something that is professional when they don't have the professional skills or the support to create something that is quote unquote professional. So let's talk a little bit about more about providing clear expectations. So a lot of this comes down to your assignment and the prompt in your assignment. It's got to have some really concrete guidelines and some processes that's going to work for the assignment, right? You can walk them through kind of the exact steps that are needed to successfully accomplish the outcomes that you've set. And by that, I mean, not necessarily like saying, oh, you need to open Premiere, import this, edit this in this specific way. No, you could say things like, I need you to demonstrate this in this amount of time using this amount of extra material that you get in this way, right? It's about kind of detailing out the complexity of what you expect them to accomplish, right? So these kind of questions should be in your guidelines, right? It should be answered by the guidelines. What's the time frame and the due dates? What can they use for research, right? Can they use, do they have to go through academic resources, or is it something that they can find video clips from news media, things of that nature? Like, what specifically are you looking for them to use as research? How many sources do they need? What kind of length do you want these projects to be? A 5-minute podcast is a whole lot different than an hour-long podcast. It's going to be shaped a lot differently. What are some sample topics? What have people accomplished in the past? Give them something to go off of, that they're not going to necessarily copy the same topics, but it gives them an idea of what kind of topics are possible to accomplish with this kind of project. What could be used for visuals, right? So do they need to add infographics, right? Do they need to incorporate text? Is that something you don't want any text, don't want any graphics, you just want them talking? It's all going to be kind of for a podcast, you want them to add sound effects, you want them to add music. Do they have to establish some kind of mood through the use of other materials? Is that an important thing to your project? Also, what tools or software are they going to use? Now, students will be able to use whatever they have access to, right? That's just kind of how it works, right? With a lot of these projects, you can make recommendations, but you can't actually force them to use a specific tool or project. But it's good to have a good suggestion for what to use. If it's something simple where they're creating either video or like an AVSA or a podcast without a whole lot of technical skill necessary, well, Adobe Rush might be the solution. But if you want them to create, multi-track recordings that involve sound effects and a lot of audio sweetening, right, where they fix the mistakes in the audio, then you might have them use something like Audition or something like Audacity. Knowing what microphones they should take out from Lone, things like that. That's all something that would be useful to have in your prompt. And then also how you're assessing the project, right? To let them know that what I want you to do is to demonstrate this. I don't really care about the technical prowess that you have with Adobe Premiere Pro. I don't really care what your cinematography skills are. I just want to know that you can demonstrate your knowledge of this topic. Or the opposite direction. I want you to really explore the creativity of this. I want you to really dive into, creative vision here. Students need to know one way or the other how this is going to be assessed and what kind of level you're asking them to rise to. So here's an example of a rubric for a media assignment. So what you can notice here is that there is a criteria at the bottom for the actual medium, right? And how the medium is used for ideas. And you could potentially lower that rubric number, right? So I intentionally did not put these down. These could be 20 points each, but I did not put down the number of points for each one, because depending on what you want to do with the importance of any of these different kind of topics, you may want to have it be weighted differently here. Maybe audience and purpose, making sure that they are that the modality of what they're writing matches the format that the medium that they're using. Maybe that's going to be the most important thing. So that's worth 40 points, right? Maybe the content would be, maybe the structure and argumentation that they're making might be, or maybe it's the creativity. If it's something where you want them to creatively, show some originality in the way that they present this material, maybe that's going to be weighted more. This is totally customizable too. But the idea is to basically get the writing, the organization, the content, their creativity, and the technical abilities all to be in this rubric, right? And be weighted depending on what your actual goals for their outcomes are, right? What you want them to accomplish. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what we can help with, what LSA can provide, and also some resources that are outside of LSMA. So the big one is that Technology Services has an equipment loan program. We have a couple of different loan centers across campus, one in Mason Hall and one in the MLB. And these equipment loans have cameras, microphones, USB microphones, all kinds of equipment to be able to create audiovisual materials with. Our group Blue Core is a group of students, and what they do is they help students and faculty through basic technical issues, and also help with Adobe Creative Cloud questions. And so they have open hours where students can kind of drop in with whatever question they have and receive support. I also wanted to mention both the Superior Design Lab here and the Digital Media Commons at the Duderstadt Center. Those are both places where people can make recordings. They can get support from the technical staff, and there are large amounts of computers, especially at the Duderstadt, for them to edit on. There are also computer labs basically all throughout campus through the sites, and they almost all of them have the Adobe Premiere Pro. They almost all have Adobe Rush. They almost all have Adobe Audition. ITS has a website that you can look at that has what software is installed where. I also want to mention Adobe's help site. helpx.adobe.com has by far the most comprehensive and easy to follow tutorials for all of their software. So regardless of whether or not you're doing something with video or audio or with photography, those tutorials will be the ones you send people to, not necessarily things that we've created. We have some very specific ones that you can find on our website that have things about like adding captions, things like that. But all of that, even the ones that we've created, all that information is available on Adobe's website for the Adobe products. We also have, there's a library guide that I have linked here, and I'll share a link before we leave to the slideshow, so you guys can use these links. So if you stick around to the end, I'll post it. But there's U of M library guides about creating media and using media. And also there's Sweetland Writing Center, which can help with, people generally think of Sweetland Writing Center, they think of paper help. But Sweetland also does specialize in multimodal projects, right? And so for projects where you're writing for video, students can get help with figuring out how to condense things, how to write for video through them, as well as they offer support to you as faculty to help kind of figure out what's expected of students when you do multimodal projects. So here are the takeaways for this workshop. The top 5 tips that I have for supporting media projects. So number 5, I should say, is providing students with clear objectives and rubrics, right? Making sure that students understand what's expected of them and how they're going to be assessed. Number 4, and this is something I have not mentioned yet, is if you're doing groups, if you're doing group works, to survey your students to see what existing skills are out there for media, right? So if you have a class of like 30 people and you want to create 5 groups, well, you might want to see if there are 5 people who already know how to use Premiere and make sure they're not in the same group, right? So you spread out the skill set to, one, help students learn the technology, but also to create an equitable situation. Number 3 is for faculty to create one of these projects before you ask students to create one themselves. I understand if you're trying to do one this semester, now is probably not the time you want to spend creating an AV essay, so don't do it now. But at some point, you should probably try creating one of these yourself. If it's a podcast, story map, whatever it is, try making one yourself. See how long it takes you. See what kind of revisions you make on your second draft. How challenging it is to write for a different modality. Because knowing that what struggles students are going to experience is going to be very helpful here. And also, that parade of students that comes up and asks you questions after the class is over, you will be able to answer those questions when they come up. Just for the sheer fact that you know how to use this program and know the common pitfalls that they're going to run into. If you're going to do a workshop, I highly recommend you do a working session instead. We talked about that earlier, where you have students bring their work in mid-project and work on it in class, and use asynchronous time for them to learn how to use the actual software at their own pace on their own computers or on lab computers. And instead have that working session available for a group like Bluecore to come in, or for my team to come in to kind of give critical support when needed for technical questions, and for you to see where people are at in their projects in process. This might not be feasible for larger classes, so this might be something to do with discussion sections if that's available for you. And then number 1, which is contacting us. So we have a wide range of services that we can provide to help with this kind of these kind of projects. We can help with the design part of it, figuring out your rubric, how you're scaffolding, how you incorporate something like this into an already existing class. We can coordinate the support with the loan center to make sure that there's equipment available for your students at the time that you need them to be able to take it out. We can figure out if there's a large run on equipment, how we can figure out how to reconfigure weeks of your class to be able to still accomplish a project like this. Also figuring out when if, for example, you want somebody there for a review session, there've been a number or if you want a specific type of workshop. For example, my team, we do individualized workshops for things that go beyond the basics of how to use a piece of software. We teach videography skills, interviewing skills, composition skills with photography, things of that nature that are, documentary film style techniques, things like that is something we can do for your class to help them kind of figure that out. Field recording, of audio. If you want something like that, that would be something to reach out to us as well. Also, if you want to use story maps, that would be another reason to reach out to us so we can coordinate support for that. So here are resources for you. And at this point, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll get the share link for you. So LSA Technology Services, our group, the Learning and Teaching Consulting Group, Instructional Video, Bluecore Equipment Loan. There's also grants and funding available if you're doing something that is kind of transforming the way you're teaching, or if you need some kind of assistance to accomplish a goal for teaching. We have grants and funding available for that. There's also LinkedIn Learning, which is available to everybody to if you want to learn some more advanced skills. And I also have links to Adobe Help and Sweetwind Writer for Center for Writing here as well.